He was just a poor single dad, quiet, overlooked, the kind of man people walked past without a second glance. So, when someone asked him to sing at the school event, it was supposed to be a joke. But what happened next? No one saw coming. This isn't just a story about music. It's about the notes we bury, the pain we carry, and the courage it takes to raise your voice when the world expects you to stay silent. Before we begin, if you believe in the power of kindness, second chances, and stories that stir the soul, don't forget to subscribe. Your support helps us bring more heartfelt stories to life. Now, take a deep breath and let the story unfold. A poor single dad was asked to sing at school as a joke, but his voice left the room, speechless. They thought it would be funny. They had no idea what it would wake up. Jake Rourke wasn't the kind of man who liked being seen. Not anymore. The wide brim of his faded ball cap stayed low over his brow as he fixed the leaking AC unit outside the elementary school gymnasium, the Texas heat already turning his shirt dark with sweat. He worked in silence, methodical, precise. The only music was the hum of copper pipes and the quiet hiss of refrigerant. Inside the building, laughter echoed. Parents were gathering in the auditorium for the annual fall welcome night, a polite excuse to size each other up, especially in a town like Willow Bend, where image came gift-wrapped in brand labels and family legacy. Jake never stepped foot inside those meetings. He'd drop off Lily, fix what was broken, and disappear like he always did. But not tonight. Mr. Rourke. The voice cut through the warm air. Jake turned slowly, squinting up into the shaded doorway. It was Mrs. Holloway, the principal, a woman in her 70s with a spine straighter than a flagpole and a gaze that could melt steel. She held a clipboard to her chest like it was something sacred. "I know this isn't your usual scene," she said with a faint smile. "But your name came up tonight. Thought you might want to know." Jake stood wiping his hands on a rag tucked into his belt. "What about me?" She handed over the clipboard. There, written in neat Sharpie letters under the header, "Talent Night Parent Performers," was his name. Jake Rourke, vocal solo. His hands froze. "I didn't sign up," he said sharply. "No," Mrs. Holloway agreed. "It was suggested." Jake scanned the names above his. Angela DuPont, piano. Rachel Abrams, comedy skit. And then, nestled right between them, and an enthusiastic dad juggling act him. The breath left his lungs in one slow burn. He didn't need to ask who had done it. Craig Whitman's smug voice had been ricocheting through the halls during drop-off all week, loud with backhanded comments about some people peaking in their 20s. Jake handed back the clipboard. "Take it off," he said, voice hard. "I can," Mrs. Holloway said, nodding. "But Jake, do you remember Emma's last week here?" His shoulders tensed. She filled in as a part-time music aide that fall before the accident. She told me something after a third-grade rehearsal, said one day she hoped her daughter would hear her father sing on that same stage. She said it with so much hope in her eyes, I remember it even now. Jake looked away. The memory flared like a splinter under the skin. "She's gone," he said flatly. "She left more behind than you think." The principal's eyes softened. "Sometimes so do you." Before he could answer, she turned and disappeared into the crowd now filling the auditorium. Jake stood motionless, throat tight, the clipboard still etched into his vision like a brand. A performance. A microphone. People watching. Hell no. Back home, the house was quiet. Dinner had come and gone. Lily sat curled on the couch, a bowl of popcorn in her lap, reruns of Little House on the Prairie flickering on the screen. She looked up as Jake walked in. "You went to school late," she said. "Work." He took off his boots by the door. She studied him like she always did, quiet and observant, far too much like her mother. "You okay?" He avoided her gaze. "Fine. Mr. Whitman gave me a weird look in the hallway today, like he was laughing, but also not." Jake clenched his jaw. "Don't worry about Whitman." Lily frowned. "Some girls were whispering about you. Something about you singing?" Jake froze mid-step. "You're not really going to, are you?" she asked, eyes wide. "No," he said too quickly, then softer. "Some people think they're funny." Lily looked down. "Mom used to say you had the kind of voice that could stop a storm." Jake sat beside her watching the screen, though he didn't see a thing. She said that he asked after a long silence. Lily nodded. Said that's how you met. You were singing at a street fair and she was the only one who didn't clap, so you came down and asked why. Jake smiled faintly despite himself. She said it was too sad, that I sounded like someone trying not to cry. Lily leaned into him. "I wish I could hear that song." He pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "It's better left buried." The next morning, Jake arrived at the school to fix a faulty fire alarm in the music room. As he set his toolbox down, he heard a sound that froze his breath. Guitar chords. Soft, unsteady, but familiar. He followed the sound to a corner practice room, and through the narrow glass he saw Lily. Perched on a stool, tiny fingers wrapped around a worn neck of Emma's old acoustic guitar, strumming out a fragile version of Until She Sleeps. His knees nearly buckled. The song, his song, the one he never finished, never released. A piece of melody that belonged to a past he'd buried beneath guilt and grief. And now somehow Lily was coaxing it back to life with small, determined hands. He didn't move, didn't breathe. Angela DuPont appeared at his side. "She's been practicing after class," she said quietly. "Did you know?" She asked to enter the student-parent performance. Jake turned slowly. "She what?" Angela held up a form already signed in Lily's neat, careful handwriting. "She wants to play guitar. And she listed you as her duet partner." Jake stared at the paper like it had burned him. "She found your demo online," Angela continued. "One of those old indie forums. It's only a 30-second clip, but it was enough. She said it sounded like home." Jake's voice was a whisper. "It's not her fight." "No," Angela agreed. "But maybe it's her song now, too." Jake stood in stunned silence, the ghost he'd kept at bay now humming quietly in the strings his daughter strummed. In the hallway, the school bell rang. But in Jake's mind, something else rang louder. A memory long buried, echoing with pain, but also something close to healing. He wasn't ready, but the stage, it seemed, had already been set. Sometimes the song finds you long after you've stopped listening. The guitar had dust in its seams, but the wood still sang. Lily held the instrument with a reverence that didn't belong to a child. Her fingers were too small to form the chords perfectly, but she strummed anyway, slow, clumsy, and full of heart. The melody wavered, but carried something ancient in its bones. It wasn't just music, it was memory. She didn't know her father was standing outside the door unseen, his breath caught in his throat. Jake had come back to the school to retrieve a wrench he'd left behind, not expecting to hear that song, his song, crawling back into life. Until She Sleeps. He never finished it. Emma had begged him to. "Not yet," he used to say. "When it's done, I'll know." But it never was. Until now. He backed away from the practice room, heart pounding like he'd seen a ghost. And, in a way, he had. That night, dinner was quiet. Lily twirled spaghetti on her fork, her gaze darting to Jake more than once. He knew she wanted to say something, and he wasn't ready to hear it. But she was his daughter. "Did you hear me at school today?" she asked, careful. Jake kept his eyes on his plate. "I was just passing by. I'm learning from Mrs. DuPont. She's really good. She's the music teacher," he replied flatly. Lily set down her fork. "I want to perform at talent night." Jake finally looked up, eyes sharpening. "No." "But why not?" "Because that's not why we're here," he said too sharply. "Because this whole town watches people like us just to laugh." "I don't care if they laugh," Lily whispered. "I just want to play. I want to sing something that was yours and Mom's." Jake's hands curled under the table. The ache behind his ribs swelled familiar as old scar tissue. "I told you before, some things are better left buried," she finished, voice soft. "Yeah, I know. But maybe If something's still alive in me, it's not buried. It's just waiting." He said nothing. Couldn't. The next day, Angela DuPont waited for Jake by the front gate of the school. "I was hoping we could talk," she said as he passed toolbox in hand. Jake exhaled, already weary. Angela was gentle but direct. "I've been Lily's music teacher for 3 months. She's got an ear. Not polished, not trained, but intuitive. She's chasing something she doesn't fully understand, and she's chasing it in a melody she doesn't know why she remembers." He didn't answer, just kept walking. Angela followed. She found the chord progression for your song online. Someone had saved a snippet of it on an old forum. 30 seconds. Rough quality. But the emotion. She placed a hand on her chest. It was raw. Unfinished, but beautiful. Jake stopped, turned. That was never supposed to be found. "She found it anyway," Angela said calmly, and she loved it. He looked down, jaw tightening. "She told me she's never heard you sing." "She hasn't." "Jake, that song means something to her, and to you, and I think maybe to Emma, too." Jake shook his head. "You didn't know her?" "No," Angela said, "but I've seen her daughter light up when she plays something she doesn't know was once written in pain." That silenced him. Angela waited a beat, then gently reached into her bag and pulled out a small sheet of paper. This was in Lily's backpack, her talent night form. She listed you as her partner. Jake took it like it weighed more than steel. Her handwriting was small, careful, and at the bottom she had drawn a little heart and written, "I want to finish Mom's song with Daddy." He folded the paper and handed it back. Angela didn't push. "We all bury things, Jake. Pain, regret, songs. But sometimes the right person comes along and unearths it. Gently." That night, Jake found himself standing in the garage, a graveyard of forgotten instruments and boxes he hadn't touched in years. The guitar case was where he left it, Emma's favorite. He opened it slowly, reverently. The scent of cedar and thyme wafted out. He plucked one string. It was still in tune. He laughed under his breath, a dry sound caught between disbelief and something aching toward hope. He sat down, picked up the guitar. The opening bars came easily, muscle memory fighting through rust. The chords were minor, heavy, mournful, but Lily had added something to it. A lift in the bridge, a gentler close. It was no longer only his grief. It was a duet. His hands trembled. He stopped playing, afraid of what came next. 2 days later, he walked into Mrs. Holloway's office. "I need to talk," he said. She looked up over her glasses. "About the performance," Jake nodded. "Leave my name on the list." She smiled faintly. "I already did." He blinked. "I told you to, I know. But Emma came to me once before she passed." Her voice softened. "She asked me to keep something for you. A USB drive. She said if you ever decided to sing again to give it to you." Jake stared. Mrs. Holloway opened a locked drawer and took out a small labeled stick drive, written on it in looping script for when he forgives himself. Jake sat down heavily. Mrs. Holloway placed the drive in his hand. "She believed you'd find your way back, Jake, even when you didn't." That night, Jake plugged the drive into his old laptop. A single audio file blinked on the screen. He clicked play. Emma's voice filled the room, not singing, but speaking. "If you're hearing this, it means you made it. It means you came back to the song. To me. To yourself. I hope Lily plays with you. I hope you finally let someone in. I hope you forgive me. And yourself. Finish the song, Jake. Finish it for us." Jake covered his face with his hands and wept. For the first time in 7 years, the silence wasn't unbearable. It was a prelude. Some people teach music, others remind you why you ever heard it in the first place. Angela DuPont had heard many children play clumsy notes, off-key, off-beat, full of nerves and sticky fingers. But Lily Rourke was different. She didn't have training or technique. What she had was instinct, She listened like someone who understood that silence was just music waiting to be born. When she played, it wasn't perfect, but it meant something. That morning, Angela sat beside Lily on the edge of the music room bench as the girl strummed the intro of Until She Sleeps. Her fingers stumbled over the transitions, but the emotion that spilled from the chords was pure and unfiltered. "Let's try the bridge again," Angela said gently. "I'm not sure I remember it right," Lily said. "It's not written anywhere. Just in here." She tapped her chest. Angela's heart pulled. She remembered those chords from years ago, back when she was fresh out of music school and scouring obscure forums for independent artists. That song had haunted her, a rough demo by a New York indie artist who vanished after a single upload. He never finished the song. Just 30 seconds of raw, aching beauty. She had replayed it 100 times back when she thought she'd become someone who composed symphonies. Then, life happened. A failed marriage. A son who needed her more than music did. Her dreams became softer, quieter, like distant harmonies in a forgotten key. She never thought she'd hear that song again. "Lily," she said, choosing her words carefully, "did your dad ever talk to you about this melody?" Lily shrugged. "He doesn't like to. It makes him still, like he goes somewhere else. I think it makes him remember too much." Angela nodded slowly. "It's okay to remember, even the hard things. My mom used to hum this tune," Lily said, "when I was little. She never said what it was, just that it made her feel full, like when the sun hits your back in winter." Angela swallowed the sudden lump in her throat. "That's beautiful," she whispered. "Do you think he'll sing it with me?" Lily asked, hopeful. Angela hesitated. "I think your dad is carrying a lot. Some of it he hasn't looked at in a long time. But you've already brought more of him back than I think you know." Later that day, as Angela sat alone in the staff lounge, she pulled out her laptop and opened the old forum from years ago. It was still up, archived, barely functional, like a dusty attic of forgotten art. She searched the username J. Rourke Music. One result, the demo. She clicked play. The same 30 seconds she remembered. Rough acoustic guitar. A man's voice, deep and frayed at the edges, singing like he was trying not to fall apart. Angela listened all the way through. This time, she didn't cry. She smiled. She copied the link, saved the audio, and opened a new email. To herself. Subject for Lily and Jake. Message, "Finish this." They're both ready. That evening, Angela stopped by Jake's house. It was just past sunset, and the porch light was glowing like a lighthouse. She knocked softly. Jake answered, looking tired. Older than he was, but there was something new in his eyes, not exactly peace, but motion, like someone who had been frozen and was beginning to thaw. "I wanted to check on Lily," Angela said, holding a manila folder. "She's asleep," Jake replied. "Rough practice wore her out." Angela smiled gently. "She's determined. She's also incredibly gifted." He leaned against the doorway. "She has her mother's ears, and her stubbornness." Angela hesitated, then held out the folder. "What's this? I printed something off the forum, where I first heard your song," she said. "I used to follow a lot of indie music. When I heard that demo, I saved it. It got me through a pretty dark year." Jake opened the folder. There, printed in grayscale, were the forum comments, people reacting to his short clip. One said, "This song feels like a man singing to someone who's already gone." Another wrote, "Don't know who you are. Rourke, but if you ever finish this, I'll buy the album on vinyl just to say thank you." Jake blinked. He hadn't seen these in years. Angela added softly, "I don't think you realize how many people you already touched, even before Lily. Even before Emma died." Jake looked away, swallowing hard. "She believed in you," Angela continued. "So does Lily. You don't have to get back on a stage, Jake, but maybe you just don't have to run from the music anymore." He closed the folder slowly. "That song. It was meant to be our lullaby. But I never gave it to her. Never even finished the second verse." Angela tilted her head. Then maybe you should. For her. For Lily. For you. That night, Jake sat in the garage again. The guitar was on his lap. The folder lay open beside him. Emma's voice still echoed from the USB soft kind and full of love he could never replace. He picked up a pen. On an old notepad next to scribbled chords and half-faded lyrics he wrote a new line. She sleeps where silence carries light, but in her dreams I still arrive. He strummed softly. The music no longer sounded like a eulogy. It sounded like a return. A bridge back to something worth saving. In the bedroom down the hall, Lily lay awake, her hand resting on the guitar-shaped nightlight she kept by her bed. Through the walls, she could hear faint strumming. She smiled and closed her eyes. The song was coming back. And so was her father. Sometimes it takes a child's hope to do what grief never could. Jake wasn't ready for the envelope. He found it on the kitchen table the next morning, pale blue sealed with the sticker of a treble clef, and his name written in Lily's careful print for Dad. Inside was the official Talent Night performance form. The boxes were neatly checked. Participant Lily Rourke. Accompanist Jake Rourke. Song title Until She Sleeps. He read it twice before exhaling a slow, uneven breath. On the back, she'd drawn a sketch of 3 stick figures standing on a stage, one with a guitar, one with long hair, and one holding a microphone. Above them, in looping cursive, it said, "For Mom," so she can hear us wherever she is. His heart clenched like a fist. The garage door creaked open and Lily peeked in. Her eyes flicked to the envelope in his hands. "I wasn't sure if you'd be mad." Jake didn't speak. He couldn't yet. I thought if we played it together, maybe it wouldn't hurt as much," she added, her voice tentative. He set the envelope down. "You applied without telling me. I know," she said, biting her lip, "but you always say no before you think about it." That stung, mostly because it was true. He rubbed a hand over his face. "Lily, people don't change overnight." "You don't have to," she said simply. "Just one night, just one song." Jake looked at her, really looked, and saw the exact same stubborn light Emma used to have in her eyes. Not a demand, not a manipulation. Just belief, quiet and unwavering. And for the first time he didn't want to walk away from it. The next day, Jake stopped by the front office of the school. Mrs. Holloway looked up from her computer, her reading glasses perched low on her nose. "Jake," she said with a warm but unsurprised smile, "I was wondering when you'd show." He exhaled. "Lily submitted us for Talent Night." "She did. A bold move. I didn't want to say yes," he admitted. "But you didn't say no." "No," he said quietly. "I didn't." She stood and retrieved a folder from her filing cabinet, sliding it toward him. "Then, this is yours. Schedule text set up instructions, rehearsal dates. I took the liberty of keeping your name on the performance list." Jake raised an eyebrow. She gave a soft shrug. "Old habits. Emma used to say that planning for hope was always worth the risk." That name still landed in his chest like a dropped stone. Mrs. Holloway sat again, folding her hands. "Jake, I know you didn't ask for advice, but there's something I've learned working in schools all these years. Kids don't need perfect parents. They need parents who show up when it counts. You don't have to be a singer again. Just a dad willing to stand beside his daughter." Jake knotted his throat tight. "I'm trying. That's more than enough." Meanwhile, in the music room, Lily practiced with Angela on the old upright piano. The song was beginning to shape into something that resembled a full performance, not polished, but real. Angela stopped after a run-through and looked at Lily. "He's thinking about it, isn't he?" Lily smiled, her fingers brushing the guitar strings. "He sat with the guitar last night. He didn't say anything, but I could hear it. He's trying." Angela nodded. "That's the bravest kind of love." Lily leaned in. "Do you think he's scared?" Angela hesitated. "I think he's grieving. And sometimes grief hides itself as fear, especially in people who are used to protecting everyone else." Lily looked down. Do you think Mom would be proud? Angela reached across the bench and touched her hand gently. I don't think. I know. That evening, Jake pulled the guitar into his lap and stared at the worn fretboard. He replayed Emma's voice in his head. Finish the song. Jake. Finish it for us. He reached for the notepad again. The lines were coming clearer now. And when the moon forgets to rise, I'll still be standing where we said goodbye. Playing chords, you'll always know, in the silence where the memories grow. He sang the lines out loud quietly. The words didn't hurt like before. They mended. He looked up and saw Lily watching from the doorway, arms wrapped around her small frame. You wrote more, she said. I did. Her smile lit the room. Want to help me finish the bridge? He asked. She crossed the floor in 3 running steps. The next morning, Craig Whitman stood at the front of the parent-teacher meeting, his designer watch flashing under the fluorescence as he rattled off his latest list of suggestions for the school fundraiser. Jake slipped into the back row unnoticed until Craig glanced up and paused mid-sentence. Well, well, he said, voice dripping with irony. Mr. Rourke graces us with his presence. A few parents chuckled politely. Angela, sitting near the front, stiffened. Jake remained calm. Just came to check the schedule for rehearsal. Rehearsal? Craig smirked. Didn't realize plumbing came with a mic these days. Angela rose smoothly from her seat. Actually, Jake's performing with his daughter. I've heard their song. It's beautiful. Craig blinked. Jake added, and it's not for applause, it's for Emma. That shut the room up. Angela placed a hand on Jake's arm. He looked at her, surprised by the gesture, but grateful. See you at rehearsal, she said. Jake nodded, and for the first time in a long time, when people looked at him, he didn't feel invisible. That night, as he and Lily sat on the porch under a sky peppered with stars, Jake asked, You nervous? Lily shook her head. Not when I'm with you. Jake leaned back. You know, Mom would have loved this. I hope she can hear us. Jake reached for her hand. She will. And somewhere in the distance, a soft breeze carried the notes of a song not quite finished but already whole. Sometimes the answers don't come when we ask for them, they wait until we're ready to understand. The old laptop still smelled faintly of Emma's favorite jasmine hand lotion. Jake hadn't touched it in years, not since he packed away everything that reminded him of her in the garage attic. But tonight the weight of memory wasn't something he wanted to avoid. It was something he finally needed to face. He sat alone at the kitchen table, the world hushed around him. The screen flickered to life, slowly protesting its age until her desktop wallpaper appeared a photo of Lily as a toddler on Emma's lap, both of them laughing mid-song, guitar propped between them. Jake felt a lump rise in his throat before he could fight it. The cursor blinked. He clicked into the only folder labeled For Jake. Private. Inside were 3 files. One was a Word document. Another, an audio recording. The last, a video. His hands hovered over the screen, but instinct led him to the document first. It was titled, If You Ever Come Back. He opened it. Jake, if you're reading this, it means something inside you softened, that maybe time didn't win, or guilt, that maybe you chose music again, even just once. Maybe you remembered what it felt like to breathe while singing. I need to tell you something I should have told you in person. But we both know how hard I was trying to hold everything together before that night. That message Craig sent, you saw it. I know. I saw it in your eyes that night on the sidewalk outside the venue. I wanted to explain, but we were already fighting about the song, about your tour, about everything else. I should have said this then. There was nothing between us. Ever. Jake's chest seized. Craig had messaged me out of nowhere. I didn't reply. I didn't want to cause another rift between us, especially not before your big show. But I should have told you. I'm sorry I didn't. And I'm sorry you've been carrying that silence like it was proof of something that never happened. You weren't responsible for what happened that night. It wasn't your show. It wasn't the music. It was just life. cruel and sudden, like a key change you never saw coming. Jake closed his eyes. The ache he'd buried for 7 years cracked wide open. He'd let that doubt hollow him out, let it steal his voice, his joy, even the way he looked at Lily. He opened the next file, the audio. Emma's voice floated out soft and calm, recorded without perfection, but full of purpose. If Lily ever asks, tell her she's everything I dreamed of, that she was always music to me, even before she spoke her first word. And if she ever plays my guitar, let her play it loud. Let her mess up the strings and wear down the frets. I want her to know joy lives in imperfect sound, not silence. And you, Jake, don't let grief be the only echo in this house. Fill it with music again, even if it breaks you, especially if it does. Jake sat in the dark, fists clenched, tears rolling down his face, not heavy sobs, but slow, persistent, like water carving through stone. He hadn't just lost Emma. He'd lost the truth. And now somehow she was giving it back. The next morning, Jake walked into Lily's room with the guitar in his hands. She looked up from her homework, surprised. "I think it's time we write the second verse," he said. Her face lit up so suddenly it hurt to look at her. "Really?" Jake nodded, sitting beside her. "I was wrong, Lily, about a lot of things. About your mom. About this song. About what it means to keep going." Lily hesitated. "Did she write it all?" Jake shook his head. "She started it. But I think she wanted us to finish it together." Later that day, Jake stood on the front steps of the school rehearsing lines in his head. He hadn't walked into the main office since before Emma died. It had always felt like sacred ground he didn't deserve to step on anymore. But today was different. Mrs. Holloway looked up from her desk and smiled as if she'd been expecting him. "I found something," he said, voice steady. "Something Emma left." She tilted her head. The drive, Jake nodded. And a letter. She explained everything. The principal gestured to the chair in front of her desk. "Sit." Jake did. "She loved you deeply," Mrs. Holloway said gently. "And she believed in you even when you didn't." He nodded, gripping the folder of printed lyrics he brought with him. "I need to be the man she believed I was." "You already are," she said. "You just stopped singing long enough to forget the tune." Jake's laugh was half-choked. "Well, I'm learning it again." Mrs. Holloway smiled. "That's what healing sounds like." That evening, Jake and Lily sat in the living room, a notebook between them, the guitar leaning against the couch. Jake played the first few lines of "Until She Sleeps," his voice gaining strength with each chord. Lily hummed harmonies, softly adding a sweetness he hadn't expected. "Maybe we can have a bridge that feels like a dream," she said. "Like where Mom would be." Jake nodded. "You mean something like, she dances where the silence glows in fields of light that no one knows. But when you sing, she turns to see the home in you, the song in me." Lily's eyes shimmered. "That's perfect." Jake leaned his forehead against hers. "So are you." And when they rehearsed the whole song for the first time, start to finish, it didn't sound sad. It sounded like coming home. And for the first time in 7 years, Jake Rourke didn't fear the stage. He was already standing on one built of memory's second chances and a love that never really left. It's not the silence that breaks us, it's what we do with it once it arrives. The gymnasium pulsed with warm light and whispered anticipation. Folding chairs lined up in imperfect rows. Paper stars dangled from the ceiling. Children in glitter and sneakers skipped nervously backstage while parents flipped through printed programs whispering names and trying to guess which kid might make them cry. Backstage, Lily sat on a low wooden bench clutching her guitar like it was a lifeline. Her dress was pale blue, the same color Emma once wore to a small outdoor gig years before Lily was born. Jake had chosen it from a photo, hoping somehow his daughter might carry a piece of her mother's presence on stage. Jake stood beside her guitar case, open fingers nervously adjusting tuning pegs that were already perfectly aligned. "You okay?" he asked softly. Lily nodded, but her eyes told the truth. wide shimmering, full of electricity. Jake crouched to her level. "We're just singing, that's all. Doesn't matter if anyone claps. We're doing this for one person," Lily whispered. Mom Jake smiled, his voice a breath. "Always." Then came the announcement. Next up, Lily and Jake Rourke performing an original piece titled Until She Sleeps. Jake exhaled. "Here we go." They stepped onto the stage. The house lights dimmed slightly. A single spotlight found them warm but not blinding. Jake positioned the mic, adjusted the stool for Lily, and turned to nod at Angela, who waited quietly at the edge of the curtain. Angela gave a subtle thumbs up. Lily sat down. Jake picked up his guitar. And then she froze. Lily's eyes locked on the crowd, her fingers hovering above the strings, her lips parted, but no sound came. It was a full gymnasium. Yes, but to her it suddenly felt like the entire universe was staring. The laughter, the coughs, the rustling paper, all of it swelled into one giant wave crashing inside her chest. Jake saw it instantly. He leaned in and whispered, "You don't have to do this, sweetheart. We can stop. It's okay." But she shook her head hard. "I want to," she breathed. I can't start." Jake hesitated, heart torn, then turned to the audience and cleared his throat into the mic. "I guess I'll begin." He strummed the first chord gently. The sound was simple, stripped bare. No backing band, no effects. Just a man and a wooden guitar and the ache of 7 years settling into every note. Then he sang. She left the lights on in the hall, as if the dark would take it all. I kept my voice beneath the floor, but silence wasn't her anymore. The gymnasium quieted to breathless stillness. Jake's voice wasn't polished, it wasn't flawless, but it was true. It carried pain, yes, but also warmth, memory, and a love too stubborn to fade. It sounded like a door creaking open after being locked for too long. When he reached the second verse, Lily joined in. Her voice was high, clear, uncertain for 1 second, and then steady. She didn't look at the crowd. She looked at him. Together, their voices wove through the chords like old friends returning after a long journey. Jake watched her and thought, "This is what it means to come back. Not just to the music, but to myself." Then came the bridge, the lines they had written together only a few nights earlier. She dances where the silence glows in fields of light that no one knows. But when you sing, she turns to see the home in you, the song in me. And something happened. The crowd didn't cheer. Not yet. They sat frozen, some with hands clasped over their mouths, others with eyes brimming. One teacher wiped a tear without shame. Another parent reached out and held their child's hand. It wasn't a performance anymore. It was a memory made real. A goodbye that wasn't bitter. A grief that had finally learned how to speak. Jake played the final chord and let it ring into the air. Silence followed. Not awkward, not empty, sacred. Then a single clap, followed by another, and another, until the room erupted. Lily looked stunned. Jake pulled her into a side hug, kissing the top of her head, eyes shimmering with tears he didn't care to hide. But then, a voice from the crowd. "Pretty song. If it were yours." Jake turned. Craig Whitman stood in the second row, arms crossed, holding up a phone. Jake's breath caught. "I've got a recording," Craig said with a smug grin, "of Emma singing that song. Years ago. Guess she wrote more than you admitted." A ripple passed through the crowd. Angela stood up immediately, moving toward the stage, but Jake raised a hand. He stepped forward, calm. "Emma wrote part of it," he said clearly, voice steady into the mic, "and she sang it. But she didn't finish it." He pulled a folded page from his back pocket. "This is the second verse." Her voice inspired it. "Our daughter helped write it. And if you're wondering if Emma would be proud, I already know she is." Angela reached the edge of the stage and gently passed up something small, a USB. Jake took it. Emma recorded a message 7 years ago, left it with someone she trusted, said to give it to me if I ever sang again. He looked out at the crowd. I'm singing again." A quiet awe passed through the room. Craig sat down, red-faced and shrinking in his seat. Angela smiled and mouthed, "Well done." Jake turned back to Lily. She grinned. They bowed together. And as they stepped off the stage, Jake felt lighter than he had in years, like the silence had finally sung its last verse. Sometimes the loudest sound in the room isn't applause, it's doubt slicing through everything you thought you'd healed. The applause lingered like a summer rain light at first, then swelling into a thunder of appreciation. Jake stood beside Lily in the glow of it, the spotlight warming his shoulders, the weight in his chest feeling miraculously less than it had in years. Lily's cheeks were flushed, her small hands gripping his knuckles, white with joy. She looked up at him with such radiant pride he almost forgot what it felt like to doubt himself. Almost. From the third row, Craig Whitman rose slowly, clapping with exaggerated slowness. The noise of the crowd tapered as his movements drew attention like a record needle sliding off its groove. "Well, wasn't that touching?" he said, voice loud and syrupy. The man who buried his career under guilt now resurrected by his daughter. A hallmark moment, really. A few uncomfortable laughs scattered across the room. Jake stiffened but didn't speak. Not yet. Craig took a few steps forward, waving his phone in the air. "Now, I hate to interrupt a love fest, but for the sake of transparency, don't we all deserve to know whose song that really was?" He turned toward the audience and tapped his phone. A recording began to play over the auditorium's mic feed. The voice was unmistakable. Emma's, soft, beautiful, familiar, singing the very first verse of "Until She Sleeps Raw and Intimate," the same lines Jake had just sung minutes ago. Only now, under the harsh glare of suspicion, they echoed differently, too closely. A ripple moved through the crowd, an inhale that never exhaled. Lily looked up at her father, confused. "That's Mom." Jake stepped toward the mic, his hands steady, though the storm inside had already begun to gather. "Yes," he said calmly. "That's Emma. That's my wife. That's the voice I fell in love with long before most of you knew my name." Craig scoffed. "So she wrote it. And you're taking credit again." Angela rose from her seat. "Enough, Craig." "No," Jake said, holding up a hand to stop her. "Let him say what he needs to say, and let me say what's true." He turned back to the crowd and his voice grew firm, not raised but anchored. That song began with Emma. It was born in a late-night conversation over takeout and an old nylon string guitar. She gave it its heart. But it never had a second verse. Not until last week. Not until Lily played those first chords and woke something I thought was dead. He paused, letting the silence settle again. "I didn't steal anything. I finished something. I finished something we were meant to write together, me, Emma, and our daughter." Craig folded his arms, unconvinced. "Convenient. Too convenient." Jake pulled something from his pocket, a folded printout yellowed slightly at the edges. "Emma submitted this to the New Voices program, a week before the accident. She listed me as the performer and included the unfinished lyrics and a note. If he ever finds his voice again, this is his to sing." Angela stepped forward with the USB in hand, and this she added, addressing the audience, is Emma's voice message, recorded and entrusted to the school principal, Mrs. Holloway, the night before she died. Left for Jake for this very moment if he ever came back to the music. Mrs. Holloway stood at the back of the room and nodded. "It's true. I kept it sealed until Jake was ready." The auditorium fell into a breathless hush. Jake inserted the USB into the auditorium laptop. On the projector screen above the stage, Emma's image flickered to life, grainy but alive. Her eyes, full of light, seemed to look directly at him. "Jake, if you're seeing this, it means you did it. You sang again. And I'm proud of you. I always was, even when you didn't believe it. This song, it was never mine alone. It was never yours. It was ours. And if Lily's singing it with you, that means I did something right in this life." Lily pressed her fingers to her lips, trembling. The recording ended. Stillness held the room like a hand on a fragile heart. No one clapped this time. They stood, one by one, some with tears, some with smiles. All changed. Craig sat back down, red-faced and smaller than he'd ever looked. Angela leaned toward Jake and whispered, "You didn't just finish the song tonight. You rewrote the ending." Jake looked at his daughter, and this time he wasn't just a man surviving his past. He was a father standing inside his future. Backstage, as Lily packed up her guitar, she looked at her dad. "Did you know she left that for you?" Jake shook his head slowly. "No, but I think she knew I'd need it when I least believed I deserved it." "She believed in you," Lily said softly. "I do too." He knelt beside her. "You're the reason I found my voice again." "Then let's not stop," she said. "Let's write more songs." Jake smiled, the kind that grew from somewhere deeper than his skin. "Deal." Outside, the Texas night wrapped around them like a blanket. The stars above glowed with gentle indifference the way stars always do. But to Jake they felt closer somehow, like every one of them carried a note from a song he almost never finished. He squeezed Lily's hand, and somewhere between the applause, the silence, and the sound of her laughter drifting into the night, he realized he wasn't afraid anymore. Not of the past, not of the stage, and never ever again of his own voice. Some truths arrive late not because they were lost, but because we weren't ready to hear them. The silence in Mrs. Holloway's office was not empty. It was the kind of quiet that arrives after a storm. Not peace exactly, but the moment where everything inside you is rearranged and still finding its new place. Jake sat across from her, the USB clutched in his hand. It felt heavier than plastic should feel, like the weight of years, of questions, of the apology he never got to give and maybe never needed to. Mrs. Holloway's hands were folded in her lap. "I almost gave it to you 2 years ago," she said gently. "Lily had drawn a picture of your family in music class. You looked distant. She'd drawn herself standing between you and Emma, arms wide, like she was holding you both together." Jake swallowed. "She showed it to me," the principal continued. "And I pulled the drive from the drawer, held it in my hand. But something in my gut said not yet, that if you were handed truth before you were strong enough to hold it, it would only shatter you more." Jake stared down at the USB. She knew. Yes. Emma always had a strange kind of timing. She could feel what was coming but never rushed it. She trusted people to find their own way. Even you. Jake blinked fast, grounding himself in the feel of the carpet beneath his boots. "I hated myself," he said quietly, "for what I thought she might have done, for what I didn't do, for not singing to her that night, for thinking the music mattered more than getting home." Mrs. Holloway's voice was calm but firm. "That guilt wasn't yours to carry. And Emma tried to tell you, in that message, in that submission form. She left you a thread home." Jake looked up. "You knew all this time." She nodded. "She came to me the day before the accident. Said she had a favor to ask. She left the USB the lyrics and told me, if he ever forgives himself, give this to him. If not, maybe give it to Lily one day." A pause. "Jake, you came back. You stood up there and sang her words, your words with your daughter. You didn't just forgive yourself. You honored her." Jake nodded slowly, eyes glassy. "I just wish she could have heard it." "She did," Mrs. Holloway said. "Maybe not with ears, but with everything else." Later that night, Jake and Lily sat at the kitchen table. The house felt warmer, not from heat, but from something restored. Jake plugged the USB into his laptop again. "You sure?" he asked gently. Lily nodded. "I want to hear her." They watched the video one more time. Emma's face flickered to life again on the screen. Her hair pulled back, eyes tired but alive with something deeper anticipation, maybe. "Faith. If you're watching this, it means you made it. Maybe not to a stage, maybe not to forgiveness, but to a place where you could let the music in again." Jake, I never blamed you. Never. I loved that you sang even when I wished you would stop for dinner. I loved that your songs had sadness because that meant you were paying attention to life. Jake's hand found Lily's under the table. Lily, if you're there, I hope your dad has learned to play loud again. I hope you sing when it rains, and I hope you mess up the bridge sometimes because perfection was never the point. The point was don't leave anything unsung. Emma smiled softly at the camera. The best songs aren't written when we're happy. They're written when we're brave. The screen faded to black. Jake wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Lily leaned her head on his shoulder. I think I want to write something new, she said. Jake looked down at her. Another song. Yeah, but not about Mom. Lily said, not just about missing her. I want to write one about now, about how things are getting better. Jake smiled. Then we write it together. The next morning, news of Jake and Lily's performance had spread. Parents approached him outside school drop-off with warm smiles. One offered to record their next song. Another said his teenage son wanted guitar lessons if Mr. Rourke has time. Even Craig, red-faced and stiff, muttered something resembling an apology before shuffling away. Angela found Jake near the music room, his guitar slung casually over his shoulder. That was something last night, she said. Jake chuckled. I expected to survive, not to walk away healed. She looked at him kindly. Sometimes music isn't the medicine. It's the mirror. He nodded, thoughtful. You were the one who reminded me I was still a musician, even when I didn't believe it. Angela tilted her head. And you reminded me why I ever became a teacher. Their eyes lingered just a second longer than casual conversation required. Then Jake broke the gaze gently. Lily wants to write something new, he said. She wants to move forward. Angela smiled. Good. Moving forward's where all the best bridges live. That afternoon, Jake pulled into the driveway and found Lily already on the porch, notebook, open pencil between her fingers. I've got a chorus, she said before he even turned off the engine. Oh, yeah, he stepped up and sat beside her. Let's hear it. She cleared her throat dramatically, then recited. We were quiet for a long time, but the silence didn't win. Now we sing with open windows, letting all the light back in. Jake let out a low whistle. You're gonna outwrite me by Christmas. She laughed and passed him the notebook. Your turn. He thought for a moment, then added, Some songs live in shadows, but they don't belong to pain. They're the bridges that we build so we can feel the sun again. Lily beamed. Dad. Yeah, do you think she hears us when we sing? Jake looked up at the sky, then back at his daughter. I don't think she ever stopped. And as father and daughter sat side by side filling empty pages with new music, they weren't just writing lyrics. They were writing life again, louder, fuller, and finally free. Healing isn't the end of a song. It's the moment you realize you're ready to share it. The email arrived at 7:03 a.m., just as Jake was pouring Lily's cereal and humming their new chorus under his breath. Subject, congratulations. You've been invited to perform at New Voices Rising State Showcase. Beneath it, a formal letter with gold-embossed text and the seal of the Texas Community Arts Alliance, Mr. Jake Rourke and Lily Rourke. On behalf of the New Voices program, we are thrilled to invite you to perform your original song, Until She Sleeps, at our upcoming statewide showcase in Dallas. Your submission moved the judging panel deeply. Your story, authenticity, and performance represent the very heart of this initiative. Jake stared at the screen, blinking slowly. Lily skipped into the kitchen, still in her oversized pajamas. Morning. He looked up at her eyes, still fixed on the screen. You might want to get dressed. Why Jake turned the laptop so she could see the email. Lily read it silently, mouth falling open. Wait. Is this real? Jake nodded, lips curving into a stunned smile. They want us to perform. She let out a squeal cereal forgotten and launched herself into his arms. He caught her midair, spinning her gently before setting her down, both of them laughing. But somewhere behind the joy, a flicker of hesitation crossed his face. Dallas was no school gymnasium. This would be lights press people from all over the state, professional-grade sound, a stage big enough to swallow nerves whole. And yet when he looked at Lily's face beaming with anticipation, he knew they weren't just ready. They needed to do this. 2 days later, Jake stepped into the school office, guitar case in hand, wearing the same denim jacket he used to perform in years ago. He hadn't worn it since Emma died, but this morning it felt right, like a coat he finally grew back into. Mrs. Holloway greeted him with a smile that bordered on maternal pride. "They called me," she said, handing him a printed version of the New Voices invitation. "Wanted a formal recommendation. I told them you were the most honest voice I've heard in 2 decades. Jake rubbed the back of his neck. "Hope I can live up to that." "You already did," she said, "by coming back." Angela peered around the corner clipboard in hand, a lanyard swinging from her neck. "They want us to help prep your tech file for the Dallas venue," she said. "Stage layout, mic settings, backing track details." Jake raised an eyebrow. "They're really organized." Angela chuckled. "State funding meets school talent. It's a beautiful chaos." As they walked down the hall together, Angela said, "Jake, do you realize what this is? Most submissions get lost in the shuffle. But your song, your story, cut through. People heard the heart in it." Jake nodded slowly. "For a long time, I thought my voice didn't matter anymore." Angela gave him a look. "Then it's a good thing your daughter disagreed." Rehearsals took on a new energy. Each evening after dinner, Jake and Lily would spread their lyric sheets across the coffee table, guitars tuned, harmonies sharpened. Angela would stop by sometimes to accompany them on piano or tweak their pacing, always careful to keep things organic. "This part," she'd say, pointing to the second chorus, "don't try to oversing. Just feel it. That's the moment people will lean in." Jake listened, trusted her, and something quietly powerful began to grow between them, not fast, not loud, but solid, like two people who understood what it meant to lose their way and build their lives back note by note. One night after Lily went to bed, Angela lingered on the porch while Jake locked up. "She's really something," Angela said, looking toward Lily's window where soft light glowed. "She is," Jake replied, leaning on the railing. "She saved me, you know, and she doesn't even realize it." Angela glanced at him, her voice softer. "You saved her too, Jake. You gave her mother's melody back. That's not a small thing." Jake met her eyes. "Neither is what you've done for us." They didn't say anything more after that, but they didn't need to. The next morning, something else unexpected happened. The school community, still riding the high of the talent night, launched a fundraiser campaign online titled "Help Jake and Lily Share Their Song." It was simple, a video clip of their performance and a few words from Angela. "This is a story about a father and daughter who found their voices together. Let's help them take it further." In less than 24 hours, they raised enough for travel, lodging, and gear transport to Dallas, with hundreds of comments cheering them on. Jake sat on the couch reading them aloud to Lily. "You made me cry in the best way," he read. "Reminded me of my own dad. Go show them what Texas voices can sound like." Lily grinned, kicking her feet beneath her. "They really heard us." Jake nodded, eyes shining. They did. Later that week, a package arrived in the mail. It was from the New Voices program, 2 backstage passes laminated and gold-edged. And beneath them, a handwritten note. "Dear Jake and Lily, your submission didn't just move us. It reminded us why we do this work. Some stories are too important to be kept small. Bring your hearts, bring your voices. We'll see you in Dallas." The New Voices team. Jake read it twice before looking at Lily. "You ready for the big stage?" She grinned. "As long as you're beside me." He reached for her hand. "Always." And somewhere in the space between school stages and statewide spotlights, between handwritten lyrics and rediscovered hope, something had changed forever. They weren't just father and daughter anymore. They were a band, a team, a song that could never be silenced again. The stage doesn't give your story power. You do the moment you sing it without fear. The stage in Dallas wasn't just bigger, it breathed. Like a living thing made of steel velvet and voltage. It shimmered beneath an arc of golden lights with rows upon rows of audience members stretching into a soft, amber darkness. Jake stood backstage with Lily, both wearing wireless mics clipped to their shirts. Stagehands rushed past. Final sound checks buzzed. A row of young performers stood nearby, pacing, humming, rehearsing under their breath. Jake recognized the nerves, the charged stillness before the spotlight. He'd lived in that edge once years ago, but tonight he wasn't alone. Lily was bouncing slightly on her toes, not from anxiety, but pure energy. She clutched her guitar tightly, but her smile hadn't faltered once since they arrived. Jake leaned down, nervous. She shrugged, grinning. A little, but mostly just ready. He chuckled. You sound like your mom. Then I'm exactly who I'm supposed to be, she said. They were the final act on the schedule. The headliner slot, the one reserved for a performance that would leave the room hushed, maybe changed. Jake had once dreamed of stages like this, of audiences this size, but never like this, never hand in hand with his daughter singing a song written from grief grown in silence and bloomed into something brave. The MC walked up behind them. You're on in 30 seconds. Jake nodded, took Lily's hand and gave it one gentle squeeze. Whatever happens, he said softly, just sing for her. Lily whispered, I already am. As they stepped onto the stage, the auditorium fell into a respectful hush. No flashy entrance, no cue lights, just two figures under one golden spotlight and the hum of a single acoustic chord strummed with care. Jake opened with the first verse. His voice husky, honest, familiar. She left the lights on in the hall as if the dark would take it all. The audience didn't move, didn't breathe, because the voice that echoed from the stage wasn't that of a polished performer, it was that of a man who had lived every word. A father, a widower, a once broken soul who had climbed back into melody with dirt still on his hands. Then Lily came in harmony first, then melody of her own. Her voice was gentler, higher, like a thread of light weaving through her father's shadow. And when the moon forgets to rise, I'll still be standing where we said goodbye. A hush deeper than silence settled. And then came the bridge. Jake stepped back, letting her sing it solo. She dances where the silence glows, in fields of light that no one knows. But when you sing, she turns to see the home in you, the song in me. In the front row, Angela wiped away a tear with the back of her hand. Beside her, a woman from the foundation leaned forward, elbows on knees, entirely still. The final chorus swelled father and daughter now in full harmony, not just vocally but spiritually. It wasn't performance, it was communion. Now we sing with open windows, letting all the light back in. The last note faded naturally, no forced vibrato, no showmanship. Just one final clean chord. Silence, not a breath. Then a standing ovation, not like the kind you see at awards shows, choreographed and expected. This one rose like a wave, genuine, raw. People clapped with their whole bodies. Some wiped their faces. Others reached for the hand of the person next to them. Jake looked at Lily. She looked back at him, and both of them smiled like they'd finally exhaled after years of holding their breath. Backstage was a blur of handshakes, cameras, hugs, and well-wishers. But Jake kept one hand on Lily's shoulder the whole time, grounding both of them. Angela found them in the dressing room, still glowing with residual adrenaline. I think you broke the whole room, she said, eyes still damp. In the best way. Jake smiled. Felt like we fixed something, too. A voice behind them chimed in. It was Owen Angela's son. He'd come with her, sat through the entire showcase without complaint, quiet and reserved. Now he stood clutching a program in his small hands. His voice was soft, but clear. I liked the dream part. Angela turned slowly, stunned. It was the first full sentence Owen had spoken in public. Jake knelt down, touched the boy's shoulder. That part's about where people we love still live. Owen nodded. It sounded like her. Angela brought both hands to her mouth, blinking fast. Later, she pulled Jake aside. I don't think you realize how many people you're reaching. Jake shook his head gently. I didn't write this song for the world. She smiled. That's why it mattered. Back home, a few days later, Jake stood in the community center's newly renovated music room, the one built with leftover fundraising funds from the school concert, and a grant the New Voices team helped push through. A new plaque had been mounted above the entrance, the Rourke Room, in honor of those who sing through silence. Jake now taught once a week. Kids who'd never touched an instrument now plucked chords and hummed, some shy, some bold, but all of them chasing melody like it was something they could grow into. Angela joined him sometimes. Lily, too. And once in the middle of a warm-up circle, one boy asked, "Did you always know you were going to be a singer?" Jake paused. "No," he said. "I was a mechanic who forgot I could still make music." "Then what made you remember?" Jake looked toward Lily in the corner, helping another student adjust their strings. He smiled. A quiet voice. That was brave enough to sing first. The room echoed with soft chords and laughter. And through it all, beneath the frets, beneath the lyrics, beneath the old pain and the new joy, there was something more enduring than any stage or spotlight, a father and daughter who had taken grief and turned it into grace. Some songs end. Others live on in the people who hear them and the ones brave enough to sing them again. The Texas wind was soft that afternoon, rustling through the oaks outside the newly finished Harris Family Community Center. The sun dipped low behind the building, casting long shadows over a crowd that had begun to gather, most of them in folding chairs set up across the lawn. Jake stood just behind the temporary outdoor stage, adjusting the collar of his shirt while Lily tuned her guitar next to him. It wasn't a fancy event, just a community gathering to celebrate the opening of the music wing they had quietly helped build. Yet somehow it felt larger than any performance they'd done before. Angela approached with 2 mugs of lemonade, handing one to Jake. "Ready?" He nodded. "You'd think after Dallas this would be easy." She smiled, her voice low. "You're not performing for a panel this time. You're performing for home." Jake turned toward the stage. Dozens of familiar faces were seated, teachers, students, old neighbors, even Craig, now fully recovered and walking steadily with a cane. His wife had joined him, holding his hand tightly. Nearby sat Mrs. Holloway, proud as ever, her red lipstick perfectly in place. And in the very front row, an empty chair stood draped with a single white scarf. Emma's. Jake had placed it there himself. He wasn't here to replace her memory. He was here to honor it. "Jake," Lily said, tugging gently on his sleeve, "can I say something before we sing?" He looked at her a bit surprised. "Of course." She clutched the microphone as they stepped onto the small stage together. The crowd hushed. Lily's voice rang, clear, steady. "A year ago, I thought music was just something we used to do. Something my mom had and that we lost when we lost her." A silence settled. Not uncomfortable, just heavy with truth. But then I learned, she continued, that songs don't disappear. Sometimes they hide, sometimes they wait, and sometimes they come back when we're ready to listen. She looked up at her father, eyes brimming but bright. This song isn't just for her anymore. It's for everyone who ever thought their voice didn't matter. The applause was gentle, like a breeze rustling through leaves. A quiet appreciation. Jake stepped up beside her guitar slung in place. He looked out at the audience and paused. "I want to thank this community," he began, "for showing me that even a man who gave up on his dreams can still find his way back when someone believes in him." He nodded toward Lily. "This girl reminded me what it meant to sing, to grieve, to heal, and to begin again." They started to play. The song wasn't the same as it had been in Dallas. It had grown, softened in some parts, deepened in others. There was a new verse Jake had written just a week ago, one that spoke of redemption, of being seen, even after years of silence. I walked a road of rust and rain with empty hands and Echo's name. But now the wind sings back to me, a harmony of who we came to be. The audience sat motionless, fully immersed. And then the final chorus rose not loud, but full of memory, of presence, of every voice that had ever been lost but found again in the echo of love. When the song ended, Jake and Lily didn't bow. They didn't need to. People rose quietly. Some clapped. Others simply stood hearts open, letting the music settle wherever it was meant to land. Angela stepped up beside them. Her eyes shimmered with quiet pride. "You didn't just build a music program," she whispered. "You built a legacy." Jake exhaled deeply. For the first time in years, he felt no weight on his chest, no ache behind his ribs, just warmth and peace. Later that night, after the chairs were folded and the lemonade had run dry, Jake stood alone outside the center. The stars were just beginning to show. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small envelope. The same one Emma's old friend had given him, the one that had been sealed in the envelope with the flash drive months ago, but unopened until now. Jake had never felt ready. Until tonight. He unfolded the note, breath caught in his throat. "Jake, if you're reading this, it means you've sung again. You found your way back. I knew you would. Don't carry my silence as your burden. Let it be your bridge. Sing not because I'm gone, but because you're still here. Love, always, Emma." He closed his eyes, tucked the note against his heart, and whispered, "Thank you." In the months that followed, the Rourke Room became more than a place, it became a haven. Kids who never imagined themselves musicians found rhythm in their fingers and melody in their bones. Parents stopped by just to sit in on sessions. Teenagers stayed late after school, not because they had to, but because something beautiful was happening. Jake taught twice a week, sometimes 3. Angela co-led a women's harmony circle. Lily, now a confident 13, started writing songs of her own and helping younger students find their voices. Her laughter echoed down hallways once filled with nothing but dust and storage bins. Every now and then someone would ask Jake if he missed the spotlight. He'd just smile and say, "I found something brighter." One morning, a little girl about Lily's age knocked on the center's door holding a notebook of poems and a tremble in her voice. Jake knelt down and smiled. "Do you like to sing?" She nodded, nervous. "Good," he said, gently opening the door wide. "Let's find your song." And just like that, the melody continued. Not loud, but everlasting. Because the most powerful songs aren't the ones that top charts. They're the ones that heal. The ones that come from broken places. The ones that dare to rise again. And sometimes all it takes is a quiet voice brave enough to sing first. And that was the story of a father, a song, and the quiet strength that changed everything. We'd love to hear from you what part of this story touched you the most, and where in the world are you watching from? Drop a comment below, we read every single one. If stories like this move, you don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, so you never miss a moment of inspiration, healing, and heart. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. Your presence means more than you know. Until next time, stay kind, stay strong, and never stop believing in second chances.